over to her. Here you go.
You did it. Okay, hi. Hello, everybody. Shalom Aleichem. So happy to be with you all today. Thanks so much for inviting me, Kimberly. I'm really honored to be your virtual guest here. I love Northern California very much. I lived in Berkeley for quite a while, and the Peninsula is a lovely place, and you're all very lucky to live there. Weather-wise, maybe not traffic-wise, but otherwise, yeah, Baruch Hashem. So, Kimberly, are you gonna watch the door?
Oh, yes, I will definitely be on top of that.
Okay, great. So I'm going to share my screen with y'all. And I'm going to hide that so I don't see it. Okay, so this presentation is really about because Kimberly told me about the whole idea of Jewish magical thinking being sort of the driving theme of this. And, you know, there's questions we have to ask ourselves about vocabulary. When we hear things like magical thinking, us postmodernists think of it as, you know, through a psychological lens, like a child's magical thinking. If I'm very, very good, my parents won't get divorced. It's like a cause and effect from a child mind, you know, but that's not how Jewish thought about magic or magical thinking back in the day, especially when it has to do with astrology. So calling this Jewish astrology, where magic and science meet the cycle of sacred time. And you all are able to get a copy of this presentation if you write to me after this. Okay. So on one hand, you have to ask yourself, here's the question. Here we have my satirical Photoshop picture of an ultra-Orthodox Haredi Jew in Mea Shearim to the left of the screen. And he's holding up a little sign that says, Ein Mazal Yisrael, meaning there is no Mazal or constellation that has power over Israel. In the Shulchan Aruch, which is, of course, the code of Jewish law, it says specifically one must not inquire of the astrologers and not consult lots. Of course, the word for lots is pur, as in Purim. What did they mean by that? How does that make sense? You have this written in Jewish law, and on the other hand, as Tevye says, astrological motifs in art, artifacts, household items, ritual objects, household ephemera, and in Jewish text from antiquity through the modern age, really to the eve of World War II, more than just suggest, really prove that astrology was a common component in the lives of Jewish communities. It was sort of an ubiquitous symbolic language, because astrology is a language of symbols and archetypes, and Jewish astrology has specifically Jewish language archetypes around it, and our rabbis understood that. So, of course, we know that astrology, understanding the language of the stars, what are the stars saying, has been part of the Jewish story since Maseh Bereshis, right? In the beginning, Genesis 1:1, first thing you have going on is the celestial orbs on the fourth day of creation is the sun and the moon are created. This is a beautiful picture of the fourth day of creation from the Warsaw Picture Bible. Many, 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 if not most of my illustrations are from the Center for Jewish Art's online database, which is searchable by iconographical subject. So the Hebrew Bible, just talking about the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, okay, it is full of the glory of the celestial creation. I just chose a few of the many, many, many verses in the Torah and Tehillim. These all are actually from Tehillim, written by King David, that praises the celestial creation as the most glorious and beautiful, gigantic, and faithful of all of God's creations. And this is a theme that is constantly repeated in the poetry books and thematically in the rest of the Tanakh. So the astrology in the Hebrew Bible, which of course predates the Talmud and all the rest of our writings, it views the celestial creation, the sun, moon, and all the planets, as the greatest and most obedient and gloriously beautiful of all the servants of God. They radiate divine power and glory. And at the same time, the Hebrew Bible condemns idolatrous worship of the stars as a substitute or an intermediary to God, and relates Israel's future progeny to be as numerous as the stars in the heavens, Joseph's dream of the tribes as the stars, the messianic promise of a star out of Jacob spoken by Balaam. These are all usages of analogy of the heavens and the celestial servants of God. So it's very important in the iconographical understanding of the Hebrew Bible. We really understand, and I'm going to show you a picture in a minute, that is the understanding of the ancient Hebrews was as above, so below, because the Israelite encampment in the desert mirrored the Zodiac, okay? So here we have in Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 2, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and said, the Israelites shall camp, each of them with his standard under the banner of their tribe. They shall camp around the tent of meeting at a distance. So it describes the same exact configuration of every single time they camped. They camped and made camp 42 times. I'm sure you've heard this. It's a famous trope. 42 times, but they did it all the same time every time. Always Yehuda, which is Aries, to the east, always Ephraim, which is Libra, to the west, Dan to the north, and Reuben to the south, and the other tribes arrayed around them, with the tabernacle in the middle and the Levitical families around the edges of it. Not only is
I'm so sorry to interrupt your flow. We are getting a suggestion from the room that if you switch your presentation to slideshow mode, we'll get a bigger screen. Right now we're seeing a compressed screen, so I don't know if that's possible for you, but we'd see more of your slide or a larger version.
Okay, hold on.
No problem.
Okay, let's see. Boy, I hate when this happens, just because it's hard to see there's this floating screen up here that makes,
Totally. The slides are just so pretty. Everybody.
I know, I'm sorry. Well,
no, it's okay.
I would love to be able to do that if I could click here. Let me stop the share.
Sure.
See if I can do it without that. Okay, slideshow. Beginning. Hold on.
And if not, we'll proceed as is, but thanks.
All right. Are you good?
No.
Can I make it go though, is the question. Ugh.
It's still showing up at about the same size, but in a different perspective. So we'll go with
okay. Well, this is as big as it can get.
Perfect. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, so hopefully that's good. So here we have a chart that shows the Jewish year, our cycle of sacred time. So remember what we saw in the previous slide was the constellations as they relate to the Zodiac and the tribal array around the Mishkan. Here you've got the same thing. You've got the entire Jewish year starting, well, there's 4 New Years, but whether or not you are talking about Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is the New Year for kings and for documents, or Rosh Hashanah, our favorite Jewish New Year. Either way you look at it, it's the same configuration of the 12 tribes. The 12 tribes and their corresponding planetary rulers, their elements, whether they're fire, earth, air, or water, their modalities, whether they're cardinal, fixed, or mutable. Who is their mother? Leah, Rachel are one of their surrogates. And it literally is it's a picture of a person's inner psychology, as well as an outward manifestation of how I'm going to say the astral magical understanding of the configuration of the 12 tribes in the desert, when you understand that the Mishkan and the tabernacle was our highest form of spiritual technology at that time, and that it literally channeled the power of God. Right? It was like the cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night that led the camp, and the glory of that descended onto the Mishkan. It was designed to create this kind of a power vortex, as evidenced by the relating of these so-called supernatural, but not really, just higher technology. Really, if you want to know what magic is, it's just a technology you haven't made friends with yet, So that's the idea behind this. So the rabbis of the Talmud, moving on from the summary of what we can say about the Hebrew scriptures, is that there was no room for funny business. There was no toleration of any kind of worship of any kind of the creation, only the creator, and that each one of the planets was created by God to channel a certain kind of energy. Like, what kind of energy, you might ask? Well, guess what? The rabbis of the Talmud love to argue with each other about that very question, because they did study astrology and they taught astrology. There's this very important part of the Talmud that says, he who knows how to calculate the cycles and the planetary courses, but does not, of course, because it was considered a science, of him, scripture says, but they regarded not the work of the Lord, neither have they considered the operations of his hands. How do we know that it is one's duty to calculate the cycles and the planetary courses? Because it is written, for this is your wisdom and understanding in the sight of the people. What wisdom and understanding is in the sight of the people? That is to say, the sciences of the cycles and planets. And it's so important that one who knows how to calculate astronomical seasons and constellations and does not do so, one may not speak to him. That means basically you get put into cherem. If you know how to do this and you're not doing that for your community, you shouldn't even be counted as a minion. That's in the Babylonian Talmud, Shabbat 75a. Okay, and also in the Talmud, there's a long section where the rabbis are arguing with each other about which is more influential, the rising sign, which is the hour of the birth, or the planets that rule the days of the week. If people have their microphones on, would you mind muting them? Because I'm hearing background noises. It's a little distracting, so thank you in advance. So there's this whole section in the Talmud that talks about he who's born under the constellation of the sun, describes him being a distinguished man. The person who's born under the moon will be a very successful thief. someone who's born under Saturn will be someone whose plan is frustrated, or others say all nefarious designs against him will be frustrated. In other words, they had understandings of how the celestial powers manifested themselves. Nobody thought Mars was like Jupiter or that Jupiter was like the moon. They understood the personalities, so to speak, of each of the planets, because each of the planets, do you understand that the planets are in the physical realm in a way where the spherot are in the spiritual realm? I'm hoping everybody here knows what the spherot are, the 7 spherot that are the 7 lower spherot. They're energetic archetypes. They don't exist in time space. They have no mass, but the planets do. And they have similar function in that they are lenses which refract a certain kind of energy. Tiferet is not Netzach, right? So I hope that everybody is following me here to understand that the rabbis thought of the planets as having their own distinct personalities. So I told you about the wisdom and understanding. This is from this beautiful picture here is from the Sefer Evernote, which is a book of intercalations, which is how do you figure out what year we are on in the calendar. So they really valued celestial knowledge. The Rabbi Yonatan ben Zakkai is supposedly the least smart of all of Rabbi Hillel's students. He says he's like the least of them, the smallest. But still, he didn't leave unstudied all these important things: Scripture, Mishnah, Gemara, Halacha, Agada, details of the Torah, yada, 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 yada. And of course, calendrical computations, which is done via the stars, the sun and the moon, and their relationship with each other and the cycles of the different planets. And that's also includes the tefukot, which are the 4 turns of the seasons, the solstices and the equinoxes. So it was understood that understanding the cycles of the planets was part of a well-rounded education of the Torah scholar. And it also kind of infers that a lack of this knowledge was considered an intellectual deficiency. So early Rabbinic Judaism separated Jewish astrology from quote unquote magic and from Gentile practitioners. So the rabbis had to be creative because they were ambivalent about the relationship of astrology to magic. Again, what is magic? Magic is just, it depends on who you are and what you're talking about. But in this case, they were talking about things that they couldn't explain and the supernatural. And astrology to them was a science rather than a magical process. However, astrology was essential in the making of amulets and for performing magic. So those who did perform magic needed astrology to know when the best time was to perform magic. Okay, so problem. Affirmed the importance of calculating times in the seasons via the stars. So they speculated scientifically on the dimensions of the universe. All sorts of interesting speculations in the Talmud about how big the universe is, mostly in relation to how big Adam Harishon was, which was hilarious when you read it. Just, it's like a Marvel superhero thing. They didn't deny that the stars had what they felt was power or effect on humanity. At the same time, they portrayed the devout of Israel as being above heavenly influence. And they used their own personal piety, their identity as rabbis, as part of the elite, and their superior knowledge exclusive to Torah scholars to triumph over the esoteric traditions of the dominant cultures which threatened their authority. Like, that's how magic became science, to be studied and taught, to be brought into the Beit Midrash. Here's a nice picture of Dr. Yoel Finkelman. He's the Judaic curator at the National Library of Israel. and he's showing a suitcase full of ancient Jewish amulets that were discovered. And of course, they were all made with help of astrological calculations. So they had to learn the esoteric traditions of others in order to do battle with them. The Talmud features several tales of the rabbis engaged in magical contests with others, quote unquote, meaning heretics, women, and non-Jews. So astrology in the hand of others is closely tied to magic, therefore it is forbidden. But astrology in the hands of rabbis is closely tied to science, therefore it's permitted, okay? And not only did they do that, they developed differentiating identity building innovations in Jewish astrology, like Jewish planetary days differing from the Hellenistic order of planetary days. Their planetary hour system differed from the classical Hellenistic and Greek system. And of course, the creation of Jewish esoteric texts, such as the Sefer Yetzirah, which current scholarship really feels that it is a second temple document. Okay, there's been lots of machloket on that, but current scholarship, and I think internal evidence, says it's a second temple document. It has absolutely nothing, there's no reference to anything that happened after the fall of the temple in that. So this is astrology in the Sefer Yetzirah. If you don't know, the Sefer Yetzirah is our foundational book of Jewish mysticism. It describes really the creation of the universe in mathematical ways, but it also brings down the letters of the Hebrew alphabet and what they created. They created different planets, and then they created different constellations, right? So Mars was created by Dalet. We're in a Dalet year right now, actually, 5784. Dalet created Mars, which rules both Aries and Scorpio in the classical system, because in the classical system, it only went up to Saturn. So this is sort of an infographic on how the Sefer Yetzirah looks at astrology. Can't talk about astrology without talking about eclipses, and we are coming up on eclipse season. We're coming into a time period where we're going to have 2 eclipses over the next month during Adar Bet, the big one being the great total solar eclipse on the 8th day of April. That will be a huge conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus. So we're going to talk a little bit about eclipses in Jewish astrological thought. So the eclipses are when the sun and the moon do something, right? Solar eclipses can only occur, they can only happen on the astronomical new moon. So the sun and the moon have to be at the same degree of the zodiac for a solar eclipse. And a lunar eclipse can only happen on the new moon. So it says that when the sun is in eclipse, a solar eclipse, it's a bad omen for the whole world. So it means the nations are going to have troubles. This is according to the Jewish Talmudic understanding of eclipses. Okay, we'll have to just qualify it by that. Okay, so on the other hand, it said Rabbi Meir, ever the optimist, said that whenever the luminaries, meaning the sun and the moon, either one are in eclipse, it's a bad omen for Israel because they're inured to blows. We're used to being kicked. It may be compared to a school teacher who comes to school with a strap in his hand. Who becomes apprehensive? He who is accustomed to be daily punished, right? So we know that when that's bad for the Gentile nations, it's going to be bad for Israel. They're going to take it out on us. Okay, so the lunar eclipse, as I said, can only happen when at the astronomical full moon, when the sun and moon are opposite zodiac degrees from each other. So the sun is an eclipse, bad omen for idolaters, meaning the rest of the world. When the moon is in eclipse, it's a bad omen for Israel because Israel reckons by the moon and idolaters by the sun. Not exactly, because we have a lunar solar calendar. We correct the solar calendar by the sun. Then it goes on to talk about where the eclipse is, north, south, east, west, who who's it bad for? What color is it? Does it mean a famine is coming? What's going to happen? So it's all prognostication. This is all from the Talmud. Basically, it's whatever. They're not looking at eclipses like it's a wonderful thing, no matter what. Excuse me. It goes on to describe that eclipses happen for 4 different reasons. If a Torah scholar is buried without being adequately eulogized, if a betrothed girl is raped and nobody responds to her cries, homosexuality, and 2 brothers being killed at the same time. Now, if you take that and decontextualize a little and understand what they're saying here is that all of these things happen all the time. They knew that eclipses happen at regular intervals. There's an average of 4 eclipses per year, every year, sometimes 3, sometimes 5 over, a series of many, many years. That everyone who understood astrology and everybody who wrote this understood that eclipses come at regular intervals. So do all of these things that they consider to be a reason for this punishment of the Jews. Without editorializing, I'm just telling you what it says. Okay, so the idea is here that Israel's social sins become the causative reasons for their troubles. That's how the rabbis saw that. And in the sense of like, there's always going to be trouble, because how will Israel ever act differently than they do? Okay, Israel's moral failures are the cause of negative occurrences with which the nations blame the Jewish people. This is a really interesting way to look at it, because it kind of flips the narrative onto like it's all everything is our responsibility. That's what the rabbinical Talmudic point of view was that it was our responsibility, and if we're not doing the right thing, we're being punished, and the nations are being used as the scourging process for us. Okay, so it's a little bit more sophisticated than that. The north and south lunar nodal axis in the Sefer Yetzirah was called the Tali. The Tali is translated as a dragon. It's the north-south lunar nodal axis, and in Jewish astrology, it's sort of the tikkun point. It's sort of like the destiny or the karmic indication of a person's path in this lifetime. It's key to understanding the important role eclipses play in astrology and indicating the fate or destiny of individuals and kingdoms. So the dragon in the universe is like a king upon his throne, it says in the Sefer Yetzirah. The celestial sphere in the year is like a king traveling through the provinces of his kingdom. That's the sun going through the zodiac over the course of the year. The heart of a person, Lev Benefesh, is like a king at war. King at war is fighting all the time. It really encapsulates like the Sefer Yetzirah's point of view about cause and effect and destiny, that the Tali, the cosmic dragon, was in charge of, like the king upon his throne. It was sovereign over the universe. It's talked about in the Sefer HaKomi. There's more in our traditions that talk about this particular thing, the celestial hook. But I just wanted to show you this picture. See these like undulating marks here? This is actually the dragon of the lunar nodes and the eclipse points. This is somebody who took who drew the eclipse points and connected them. And you see how they look like the undulating coils of the dragon. Okay. And if you look here, these are all of the eclipses from 2001 to 2040, taken out of a very gigantic book and photographed and put together by me. Yours truly. Do you see how they look like those blue lines? They are like a undulating movement of a serpent, a dragon's body, and then it looks a lot like DNA. There's that aspect of it too. Not even going to go there, but it's worth talking about it another time. We also see in the Talmud how the sun, moon, and the dragon are prohibited images, or are they a sun, moon, and dragon? Are they prohibited images or astrological symbols for eclipses? Okay, I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but I'll just give you the highlights here. The rabbis are so fun because they don't agree on anything, and they argue each other into various corners from which they jump out and do completely crazy upside down things. So this is how to differentiate a vessel that has the sun, moon, or a dragon on it that are found by Jews. What if you go down to the Dead Seas and you find this, which is where they seem to find them, a lot of them there, right? Then the Jerusalem Talmud says one thing, that only the sun and moon are prohibited and the constellations are allowed. So you don't have to destroy that vessel. Then somebody else says, well, it depends on what kind of dragon. Some are, some aren't allowed. If you want to look at this more in depth, you can read it if I send it to you, because I want to get to the rest of this. But anyway, they end up between each other, really arguing each other to the point where they basically no, it's like you can't get rid of any of them because they're allowed only if they're used for idolatrous purpose. Well, would somebody use an expensive one or a cheap one? Like, they go on and on. Basically, they eliminate almost every possible category of what you could possibly need to destroy. So that's very typical of how the rabbis thought, is like they will make one big statement and then they'll argue themselves out of that into something completely different. And that happens not just with astrology, but anyway, here's the astrology in the medieval era, which I like to call astrology's golden age in Judaism. The knowledge of the celestial creation was by this time completely considered a science. But what is magic? It's called folklore, folk tales. Women do magic, but men are rabbis and men do science. Okay, I hope you're getting the sarcasm in my voice, but that's kind of what happened to it. You know, again, it depends on who's doing what. During this time, astrology and astronomy were still the same thing. They were undifferentiated. Nobody thought of them as different things until after the early modern era, where the Great Divorce, when science got custody of astronomy and mysticism got custody of astrology. But at this time, they were still related. Astrology and the calendar, almost all Jewish calendars had astrological calculations in them and symbols, and talked about astrology. They were in every home, they were in every synagogue. There's lots of examples of Pitiyum. I can't say that, I'm sorry. Payut, right? The songs, like Ibn Gabril's Keter Malchut, which is a song that Sephardim still sing on Yom Kippur. There's millions of verses in it that are all about the glory and the beauty and the functionality of the planets. Messianic astrology was very big during the medieval era, of course, because of oppression. Whenever you get bad social situations, you get a big uptick in Messianic astrology, predicting the end of days and coming of the Messiah via astrology. That was very popular. The Persian, and because of the Persian and Arabic influence, we had a huge jump in learning and science. Avraham Barhia took this idea of the Jupiter-Saturn cycle and turned it into messianic predictions for 1464 or 1514. Everybody's doing what they're not supposed to do, trying to say this is the year, but it's almost hard to resist, right? There was a lot of astrological techniques used by Jews in medicine and amulet making, and there were astrological understandings of the Torah and Tumei HaMitzvot, the reasons behind the mitzvahs. Ibn Ezra explained things like the golden calf as a classical example, the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol he had an astral magical understanding of these certain things. And of course, they taught astrology in the yeshivas of medieval Ashkenaz when the Jews of that were in the diaspora moved into the area that would become Ashkenaz in France and Germany along the river there. Astrology was taught in those yeshivas. This is a Sefer Evernote from Germany, late 17th century. Zodiac signs encircling the names of the planets. These guys are the 4 Tefukot, the turning points of the year. Then there was astrology in medicine, which was called medical melothesia. This was not exclusive at all to Jewish astrology. This was pretty ubiquitous. All Western astrology used this. Body parts associated with planets and constellations. In the Sefer Yetzirah, it is extremely explicit about the body parts that is in addition to or maybe different from the ones that were used in Hellenistic astrology. So our people, our Hebrew medical manuals had our traditions in it rather than the Gentile tradition. So the healing was accompanied by the drawing down of this spiritual power by the use of amulets, segulot, that they would make. And this is a copy of the Zodiac man in a Jewish medical text. It's a copy of an Italian original from the mid 15th century. And of course, he's circumcised, which is why we know he's Jewish. Okay, so you know that this segulot or amulets, I think we have an amulet expert here who is either has done or will be doing something about that. Basically, they're objects that are created to ward off evil spirits, for luck, to ensure healing of the sick, and they were made with images, often of a planet or a constellation, and magical incantational phrases and words, mystical symbols, sometimes minerals, herbs, whatever, but they were made with astrological calculations to determine the best time to create the amulet, as well as the optimum time for the amulet to be placed on the afflicted body parts by a specific planet or constellation, right? So the patient was positioned so that he or she might receive the unimpeded celestial force or planet represented on the segula precisely at the right time. So I gave an example here about someone with intestinal problems. We see here a lovely picture from a Jewish medical text with all the signs of the zodiac, talks a little bit about some of their illnesses and their specific things that you want to be able to do and watch out for in this. So we definitely understood it that way. This is another view of it. And this is an amulet for protection and healing from Germany in the mid 18th century. Of course, you see all the zodiac signs around it. So they were thought, when you think about the whole zodiac, there's a feeling of wholeness, right? It's a feeling, and that's disease is a product of something being not aligned or not whole. So I think that one reason why the zodiac is brought in, because they understood that it's a symbol for wholeness and completeness and integration. Just to quickly touch on astrology in the modern era, the Zohar and beyond. The Zohar is interesting because it has a pretty conservative view of astrology in the Zohar itself. The Zohar was written later than the Sefer Yetzirah, for instance, although some people will tell you that Rabbi Bar Yochai wrote it in the 1st century, but scholars don't actually think that's true. There's more of a creative or a non-conservative view in the extra Zoharic literature, like the Tikkun Zohar, which does things like attempts to overlay the planets upon the Sphira, which with mixed results, according to me. Okay, so basically in the Zohar, I feel after studying and looking into it, that the functions and the spiritual qualities of the planets are kind of subsumed into the spherotic system. And again, when I'm talking about the Sphirot, I'm talking about these guys here, who you all know very well. And then in 1840, there was a rabbi who wrote the B'nai Yissachar. He compiled all the existing astrological knowledge and presented it in a Hasidic and Lurianic package. So the Sefer B'nai Yissachar is, read it from the inside in Hebrew. Of course, we have the art and architecture and ephemera. We have the beautiful Zodiac themed synagogue floors and walls and ceilings. We have Zodiac themed sacred objects, such as Torah crowns. We have Zodiac themed household items, such as calendars. We have Zodiac themed ritual objects like swaddling bands, which were made into communal Torah covers. So why do we say Ein Mazal Yisrael? What do you mean there's no astrology, there's no Mazal, constellation? And there's astrologically themed ketubot, marriage contracts, one from Venice and one from Padua. The Italians made beautiful, beautiful ketubot. Here we have some lovely Torah crowns. They're sitting right on top of our most sacred material item, Sefer Torah, and they're decorated with a zodiac motif. Ukraine, 18th century. Here we've got, of course, the Megillah, and we know it's Adar now, Chodesh Adar. This is a leap year. We have 2 Adars. Baruch Hashem, this Megillah has a wonderful depiction of the zodiac there. And in the blessings of the moon, illustrated with the 12 zodiac signs, we have that here from the 18th century. I'll give you a little understanding of what I said about astrological understandings of the Torah. Ibn Ezra, our great sage, he interprets some of the commandments in his commentary, his long commentary on Exodus 28. He talks about the deep secret, quote unquote, only part of which he reveals here. He talks about the 2 wreathen chains, these chains here that I'm pointing to with my mouse. And the 2 rings represent the head of Aries and Libra, Maznaim, Tale and Maznaim. The band of the ephod represents the celestial equator. So he's talking about how the whole zodiac, just like the whole zodiac balances on the east-west, the Aries Libra axis, which is true. The Aries is Yehuda. Yehuda is the head, right? And Libra is they're the east. They're the head of this, right? But they start with Aries. So he's basically saying that the head of Aries and Libra, that's the new moon of both Aries and Libra, that's Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and its solar opposite, which is Rosh Hashanah. They're the 2 points in time which the whole of the Jewish year and the cycle of sacred time hang on those 2. That's why we have to respect the fact that the biblical imperative that Passover can only fall in the spring. It's the foundation of our Jewish calendrical calculations, right? Guard, shomer, like keep a watch on, make sure it doesn't slip away, the month of Aviv, spring, and make them the Passover offering. That's why we have a lunar solar calendar. The ephod of the high priest is balanced between the 2 wreathed chains, symbolizes how Aries, which is the spring equinox, and Libra, the autumnal equinox, keep the year properly balanced by ensuring Passover always occurs in the spring, right? So Ibn Ezra, who is a very respected, he's not a nut job, he's one of the most respected Torah commentators. He saw it through an astrological lens. He saw the high priest's ephod as an astrological instrument, which corresponded to the arrangement of the heavens, and it drew power from above, and when properly used, had the ability to predict the future. Okay, so if that's not astrology, I don't know what we have. How are we doing on time? 2:46?
Yes, we are going to want to leave some time for questions. So
okay, I'm going to go through this really quick here. Here we have our beautiful Aries, Chodesh Nisan, the tribe of Yehuda, ruled by Mars, Ma'adim. I'm just beautiful art. This is all Jewish art. This is all from the Center for Jewish Art. So you see, again, in our tradition, some of these are very old. Talks about, I'm not going to go through them all though. It's Nisan, Aries, the letter Hey, Taurus, sure, constellation of the bull, the tribe of Issachar, and Venus is the ruling planet. We have the bull is very famous, of course, the Mithraic tradition of worshiping the bull. Gemini, Ta'amim, the tribe of Zebulon, ruled by Mercury. We have lots of doubles for Gemini. That's usually shown as a double. Cancer, Sartan, which is Chodesh Tammuz, the tribe of Reuven, ruled by the moon. There's only one sign ruled by the moon, and there's only one sign ruled by the sun, which is Leo, Aryeh, which is Chodesh Av, the tribe of Shimon. Okay, and Betula, the Virgo, the Virgin. Libra, the Maznaim, which is Chodesh Tishrei, the tribe of Ephraim, the other end of the zodiac, so to speak. Tishrei. And Scorpio, Ekrav, which is Cheshvan, and the tribe of Menashe, because Joseph is split, right? Joseph is split between Ephraim and Menashe when they take out Levi to put him in the middle with the Levitical families. Sagittarius is Keshet, and that's Kislev, the tribe of Benjamin and the planet of Jupiter. Samach is the letter for Kislev, and Capricorn, the Gedi, is the goat. Chodesh Tevet and the tribe of Dan. And Saturn, Shabtai. And Shvat is Aquarius, the tribe of Asher. And Shvat is said to be, well, Aquarius is said to be the sign of the Jewish people in our literature. If we have a sign, we don't have a sign, but if we did, it would be Aquarius. Basically, that's what it says. And then Pisces, Dagim, Chodesh Adar, which we're in right now, Baruch Hashem. Okay, so everybody has all 12 zodiac signs in their personal natal chart, and you should look into that. And again, we come back to this wonderful picture of the tribes around the tribes and the constellations that they're associated with, their planetary rulers. It's all set up by the divine to reflect in the Jewish year, which is our cycle of sacred time. So I think this is our tradition and our inheritance. I think that Jewish astrology is relevant today as an astrologer. I feel that strongly. When I do people's charts who are Jewish and I'm able to talk to them using the language of symbols and archetypes, Jewish ones, it makes it much more comfortable for them. And it's really part of recovering our personal and communal heritage. And I think it's rich and rewarding insight into our journey through this lifetime. Okay, and let me see if I can escape this. Can I? Okay, I hope I didn't rush too much.
That was so comprehensive, Lorelai. That's amazing amount of material. And yes, but thank you so much for that introduction. I'm curious if anybody has any questions or comments, or I loved how you talked about how it was relevant to today's, at the end. And I didn't know if we're getting thank you from William. Feel free to raise your hand or come off mute if you have a comment or a question before we wrap. Oh, Naomi, please.
Well, first of all, that was magnificent. Thank you so much. That was a tremendous amount of information.
Overload. I mean, if I went slow and went through everything, we'd be here till Chodesh Nisan. So
and we'd love it. It was fascinating. Thank you so much. I had a question for you regarding the relationship between astrology and medicine. I wondered if you could speak more about that marvelous image you showed from the Sefer Yetzirah about aligning the body part with the season.
Right. So not only in Jewish medical melathesia, which has been going around, I mean, that was the common understanding of the day from the time of antiquity all the way through the Middle Ages until, quote unquote, early modern era and modern medicine, that the zodiac sign in the order of the zodiac, starting with Aries. Aries is the head, Taurus is the neck, etc. So it goes down the whole body. And they understood that an ailment of the body would have something to do with that constellation, that constellation had. I just did somebody's chart the other day and I was she was telling me about all her surgeries and I'm like, let me guess, hips and thighs, right? Because of her, it was all like a lot of Sagittarius. Sagittarius rules the hips and thighs. So in a sense, Aries people are always hitting their heads. And I know this because one of my sons is an Aries and they run hot fevers. It's like there are certain characteristics that are unique to these signs. And of course, as an astrologer, I have to make a little asterisk and say, really, you have to look at a person's entire chart. Like you really have to know a person's entire chart to really make a judgment like that. I don't know. I think only the elites were doing whole charts. I think the common people, the folk, were really looking just basically at sun signs because they were like, oh, this baby is a Pisces. He's born during Chodesh Adar, so we're going to embroider his circumcision cloth with Adar fishes, and then when it's done, we're going to take all the circumcision cloths in our community, launder them, sew them together, and make a beautiful dress for our Sefer Torah. So, of course, Pisces is the feet. It's the last one. So I don't think I'm answering I don't know if I'm answering your question.
You are. It's
Okay.
magnificent. I'm the person who does Jewish ethnobotany, and the
Oh,
nugget of knowledge I can trade you is that when we were treating conditions that we want to increase stamina, we do that in the period of time in which the moon was waxing, and when it was a condition we wanted to decrease, like inflammation, it was the period of time in which it was waning.
oh, 100%, 100%. I think every culture pays attention to the lunar phases. First of all, like that has to be the first thing you think about. And then you probably have to think about that first in relation to the body part, and then what goes with the body part. I mean, I didn't even talk about the herbs, the stones, the rest of it, because when you or anybody makes an amulet, there's usually more than one thing that they put on it. And even written amulets came with other things, objects or whatever. So I think that there's a whole world of what is called folk medicine, which is women's wisdom, which means it wasn't counted by the rabbis and they didn't take it seriously, but it was important. And I think that one of the important things that's happening is the recovering of that, and that we're looking and finding, scholars such as yourself and others, I think Rabbi Jonathan, like people who are looking into those different modalities are finding what the rabbis dismissed as women's wisdom, meaning it wasn't important enough for them to bring it into the Beit Midrash. They had to have their territory. It's like think of it this way: the Beit Midrash was the man cave of the rabbis and the scholars. It's where they went to get away from the woes of family life in the shtetl, let's just say. Instead of Mo's bar, they went there. I'm sorry, I hope I'm not insulting everyone, but I think it's true. Okay, so who else had a question?
I thought it was empowering, so I went on the insulted party. Did anybody else have a question?
I think I saw where's the Zodiac synagogue? Somebody asked. There's a whole bunch of them. They're called the wooden synagogues of Eastern Europe. There's a lot of them, like those ones with Zodiac floors. Those are the ones in northern Israel and Tiberias, like from the 4th and 5th century. And then there's like 15th through 18th century Zodiac floors, ceilings, and walls, synagogues in Eastern Europe, all over Poland. There are a ton of them. Again, go to the website of the Center for Jewish Art, the Bezalel Narkis online database of Jewish art, and it's searchable. And you can go crazy in there. They have thousands and thousands and thousands things cataloged, photographed of Jewish art from all over the world, from every time period. And it's freaky how much of it is astrologically themed. I thought I was going to have a hard time. Instead, I have the opposite of a hard time. I don't have enough room to show everything. What are the questions?
I think we're good on the chat, people. Anne wanted a copy of the presentation, so I'm happy to send the recording out to the registrants so we can look over it again. It just opened up so many questions, and now we need a whole series. There are so many more things I'd love to delve into. Any last remarks or final remarks before we thank Lorelai? Oh, she said William says, can you say again the date?
Yeah, it's called the Betzalel Narcus.
Can you put that in the chat?
like the you know, Betzalel. Hold on. Let me get you the link. I'll put it in the chat, okay?
Great.
I go there all the time. It should know me by heart. Come on, Google. I did just.
Oh, there it is. Oh,
did you find it?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't have the link. I just put the name of it.
Yeah.
That'll work.
It's awesome. You'll go, it's a rabbit hole. You'll be happy you fell down it, but you'll be there for days. So take water with you. Want to invite you guys to visit my website, which is myjewishstars.com, where I write and do things there. And what else do I want to say? Thank you. I want to say thank you. I think it's really cute that you invited me for this day without consulting the ephemeris, because it turned out to be a very good day to talk about Jewish astrology, and astrologically, it's a great day too.
Sometimes we just look into those things. So it's
yeah, see?
Yeah.
It's hashkafa practice. Like the whole point is, if you're a good Jew, you shouldn't have to worry about it too much. But like, who's the best Jew? Like the best Jews in the world, you know, who thinks they're the best Jew? They're all worried about it. When you're reading the Talmud, like, really, you're so good, and yet you're desperately worried about this thing. I guess it's a matter of never being too sure about yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's wise not to be too sure of yourself.
Again, thank you so much for being here. And I might put Naomi on the spot for just a second. Did you want to invite some of the local folks to see if they might want to come on March 6th and tell them a little bit about what you're going to be doing with us around herbs and teas and other things?
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm delighted that I'll be able to join in part of this series on the 6th. We'll be doing Jewish herbal magic and having a couple of teas that feature the plants that I'll be talking about. We'd love to see you.
Perfect. Yes, I'm going to write. That's at March 6th, and that's at 1 p.m. It's from 1 to 2, and anybody is welcome to join. We have a senior lunch program right ahead of it, so those folks will stay, but you're very welcome to join. And our gallery is free and open to the public. You do not need to be a PJCC member to join and to come, and you're welcome on the 17th, which is a Sunday afternoon. Naomi will also be here at 3:30. We're going to be making our own protective amulets as an interactive component of the exhibit. So if
with Dr. Jonathan Seidel.
Awesome.
And Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Seidel, yes, but with it's a double dose of awesomeness. So that afternoon, so it's a special time to come in, but you're welcome anytime that the center is open. And with that, I will just say thank you all for learning together today. That's always the highlight of my day, to be able to do that. So gratitude to everybody, and thank you. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.